It's an amazing song.
Just kind of happened. Took about 10 minutes, I guess.
Bart, you didn't write this song in 10 minutes. It took a lifetime. How'd you do this?
You know, I've never told anybody my story. When I was 11 years old, life was tough.
Where's Mama?
She's gone. She don't want me no more. And she don't want you neither.
And I've always loved music. And I found some songs that I held on to. They gave me hope.
Mercy me, that can't be his real voice.
Because I needed it.
Dad, I can do this.
No, you can't. And you're gonna blink your eyes and you're gonna realize that life has gotten you nowhere because you chased some stupid dream.
I'm leaving, Shan.
I want you to know that I pray for you all the time. And I hope that you find whatever it is that you're looking for out there.
What are you running from?
My dad.
Then write about it. Let that pain become your inspiration.
I got some stuff I need to sort out.
And I deal with it the only way I know how. And that's to write a song.
You hungry? Set the table.
What is this?
I want to make things right with you and me.
My dad was a monster, and I saw God transform him.
You have a gift, real gift.
I didn't think that God could do that. And so I wrote this song for my dad.
Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth. You've just seen the trailer for the new movie, I Can Only Imagine, and it's our honor here on Revealing the Truth to introduce you to Brent McCorkle, the co-writer, co-editor, and the second unit director of the film, I Can Only Imagine. He also composed the score for the film as well. Brent McCorkle, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Good to be with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you with us. It's an amazing song, and it's an amazing backstory. And you too have kind of an amazing backstory because you started your career not in Hollywood and not in New York in film and media there in Dallas, Texas. How did all that begin?
Wow, thanks for the question. Yes, I kind of came to the idea of being a film director late in life. I had already gotten married and had 4 out of 5 of my kids. And, you know, the advice given to me was bloom where you're planted. You know, it didn't make sense for us to move to one of the coasts and try to break in. I'd already kind of, you know, had my family and you know, was down the line. You know, we had a mortgage on our house and, you know, bills and all sorts of things. And so I stayed in Dallas. I took some film classes and I was just very passionate about telling stories through film. And it was an interesting phenomenon that happened because not many people in Dallas were dreaming of that at the time, or at least it seemed to me. So I felt very much on an island as far as my particular path. There was an amazing commercial sector where I got to work on commercials and make some decent money, you know, as a crew member. But as far as having a bunch of people that wanted to be feature filmmakers, I didn't really feel like I had a peer group at the time. And what that ended up forcing out of me was this sense that, well, I want to do this so bad, I guess I just better teach myself all of it. I guess I just better learn all of it, and that will at least give me a chance to make stuff. And so I'm very much the blue-collar factory worker, middle-class filmmaker that just kind of learned it all. You know, I think I had a little bit of raw talent, but it's the raw talent plus the tenacity plus actually applying the time to learn the trade craft. And so being in that isolated area of the States that, in Hollywood, you throw a rock and you hit somebody that's done something amazing in film. But in Dallas at the time, that wasn't the case. And I really think that forced me to push harder into every element of filmmaking, every aspect of it, because I had this feeling that, well, if I don't learn all this stuff, I'm not going to be able to have a career. So I think it had almost an interesting boomerang effect on me, where it made me dig in, and deep dive even more. And so the way my career went was, I realized I wanted to do it, talked to my wife, my kids were real supportive. I started taking film classes at Southern Methodist University, and they have an amazing film program. I was then on the weekends just running around with friends making little short movies, and also working for any clients that would let me shoot a little video for them, and then on top of that, I got introduced to some real film professionals that were making commercials and corporate work and stuff, and that was able to, by and large, support my family. So I started out like so many people do in the film world. For a year and a half, I was a production assistant, which is basically like the glorified intern. You get paid a little bit of money, but it is not fun. You're the first one there, you're the last one there, and if anybody gets yelled at on set, it's you. So that was a really good formative experience for me as well, to start at the bottom. And it definitely informs how I run my set, because there, on a classic film set, there's little people and big people, and I don't care for that. I want everyone to feel valued and honored and seen. And so being a PA for a year and a half, I think really helped set the template for, how I run my sets and really go out of my way to make people feel valued, because I've literally worked in every job, every position on a film set, and I know how it feels, when you feel kind of like this small, little, unseen, unheard person on set. And so I really go out of my way to encourage PAs, because when you're a PA on set and you have some talent and you're working, you're working and learning, you could be the next director. You have to believe in yourself, and oftentimes on set it's you're not made to feel that way. So that's really a good thing.
The second unit director position that you had in this film, I can only imagine, that was directing the non-primary scenes, all the filler. What does that second unit actually mean?
Yeah, it was really cool. We got to shoot in Oklahoma City, and there wasn't a second unit director slated. John and Andy like to shoot a lot of a team, primary unit, and that's great. I'm the same way, but they realized they wanted a lot of cool drone shots, like aerial shots, just drifting, and just a really cool vibe, just stuff that makes you slow down and breathe and think. And so I went out and got most of the drone shots for the film with an awesome team of these two brothers that run Sky Guys, and John Luke and Silas Solid. So the three of us went out and got the drone shots you see for the film. And also, this movie was cool. I think they realized it later, that it's got a bit of a travelogue feel to it. Like, when you watch it, there's a lot of vehicles taking off and landing, So, a motorcycle drives away from you, or we're following overhead on a bus, or we're following a Jeep, or we're following a station wagon. There's a lot of movement as it pertains to vehicles. And so it was fun getting all that. And then also I was in charge of scouting the entire state of Oklahoma. So part of my job was to scout for these cool locations, these aerials that we were going to get. And like when the bus drives by, there's a beautiful shot in the film that almost feels like a piece of the Pacific Coast Highway. You see water and you see it driving along a mountain. That's all Oklahoma. And I literally fell in love with the state. There's only a couple of aerial shots. One John Luke and Silas got without me in LA. So at the very end of the movie, you see the palm trees, and everything else we shot in Oklahoma City. And it was an amazing experience being able to drive all over that state and see how many beautiful locations there were. So I was also in charge of getting all the exterior shots of the locations. So when we're pushing into Meemaw's house, or we're pushing into Arthur's house, you know, those kind of shots of actually the locations that we see. So those were the two big pieces that I brought.
Now, when did you relocate here to Birmingham?
I moved here a little over a year and a half ago.
As part of the project, it kind of pulled you together with the Irwin brothers?
Yes, that's right. I edited Woodlawn with Andy, and then I ended up scoring some of Woodlawn with him, and that was a really cool experience. But I was working for them so much, you know, they had me in corporate housing, you know, because I was there so much. So it was almost like I had an apartment away from my family, you know. So for Imagine, I knew I was just going to be completely submersed in this one for a year and a half, 2 years, which turned out to be more like 2. So yeah, we moved up here, and it's been pretty much, you know, all hands on deck endeavor for me for the last couple of years.
Actually, the reason we didn't have you in studio because we're just over here off of Highway 280, so we're just not far from where you are, is because I actually want to hear some of the score, and you're sitting right there at the keys, and you'd be able to play some of that. But some of the questions I have for you in this project is, you got to spend a great deal of time with Bart Millard as you were co-writing and co-editing this project. And in a screenplay, taking this backstory that not a lot of people know about the life of Bart Millard and the birth of the song I Can Only Imagine from Mercy Me. But everybody knows the lyrics to it, but this is the backstory. This was the journey of his life, and you got to spend a great deal of time with him hearing the story. What was that like for you? How did you travel with them, or was this really one-on-one time?
No, I did. John, Andy, and I, the two directors, we went to Bart's house and hung out at his house, and it was very informal, very cool. I think one night we went to see Star Wars together, but we basically spent over 2 days just running camera and iPhones on him, just asking him about his story. This movie, a lot of people don't know it, but this movie has been trying to get made for 7 years, and it's just gotten kind of tangled up and pigeonholed and, you know, put on the shelf. And so it was really me and John and Andy's attempt to bring something just fresh and brand new. So it was a brand new, fresh script, kind of a brand new idea. And to do that, we knew we needed to spend a lot of time with Bart. So not only did we interview Bart, we interviewed Shannon for several hours, his wife. We interviewed many of the guys in the band to ask them about, you know, their journey, out on the road, and just kind of be this little underdog band that it seemed like nobody wanted, which is, you know, part of the actual film. So interviewing all those guys, and Andy did a wonderful job of almost prototyping the guys in the band. So there's one guy that was very philosophical and kind of quiet and tranquil. And there was another guy that was the kind of sensible one that was trying to keep the band together. And then you had like the young rookie, kind of the bright-eyed rookie. And, you know, we're able to kind of spread the cranky guy, usually have in the band. So it's this beautiful marriage of these 5 guys trying to make it. And those kind of archetypes of the characters came from all the interviews. And so that's one thing I'm very proud of in the film, was like, we really wanted to honor Bart's true story. We really wanted it to resonate. We wanted the essence of it to be from true facts. And so, it was 2 days of just hanging out with Bart and talking. And even when we go to lunch, somebody would set an iPhone out and hit record just because we didn't want to lose anything. And it was a really cool time. I must say that the song itself is so popular. It's a triple platinum song, and Bart is a celebrity. I mean, people know him, people, you know, see him on the street. And I must say that he is one of the most humble, down-to-earth, loving guys. And it just really blew me away because he had a lot of really bad stuff happen to him, and also the fame. And so just to see him, number one, very happy, very grounded spiritually, but also see him not letting the fame and the celebrity get to him, to see how lightly he carries that, and just be just a normal dude, you know, that you can approach, and he would look you in the eye and treat you with kindness. And I just was very appreciative of how he is kind of chosen to live his life, and just the spiritual peace and love that he exudes, you know, as a person. And I know that means so much, because when you do resonate with an artist and you get a chance to meet them, those are very crucial moments in your life. You know, you could really injure like a young kid that wanted an autograph or something. If you're in a grumpy mood, you know, that you could really injure that kid because they look up to you so much. So to know that he's not that kind of guy, he's a guy that would take the time and interact with the kid that was really moved and listen to their story. I think another thing that he's allowed to humble him, and this is very important to the story, if we had 20 people in the room today with us and we asked them what I Can Only Imagine meant to them, they would each have a very specific individual story. My daughter died, and I was going through a really hard time. I heard this song on the radio, and I knew I was going to be okay. You know, it'd be those kind of things, very deep things. So like, people attach their own personal meaning to the song, and I think that has also humbled Bart over the years, that he has his meaning for it. And I hope a ton of people go see this, because I want people to know why he wrote it. But the beauty of this song is everybody has their own personal attachment with the story to the song, and I think that has meant a lot for Bart. I know he's taken time, even in the press, to read letters from other people saying, "Thanks for sharing your story, Bart, but here's what the story means. Here's what the song means to me." And he has read those, you know, as part of the you know, pushing the film and promoting it. So it's been very cool to see that.
You know, to see this new genre of called faith-friendly films, as opposed to Christian film or faith-based film, this is really not a salvation message as it is a transformation message of forgiveness, of reconciliation, and real life parental abuse, difficult challenges of growing up in a rural area, and identity crisis, and a certain amount of self-loathing and not fitting in, kind of what you experienced there in Dallas-Fort Worth, where you could look at Austin, and Austin had a film industry, but Dallas did not. You could look at Louisiana or Atlanta, Hollywood, New York. They had a film industry, but Dallas did not. And you are somewhat of an island in that regard. So I'm sure that parts of this you could identify with in your own life, as your story kind of, you listened to his story and you thought about your own. As we all listen to the lyrics to the song, we all think about how it fills us. How did this impact you? You co-wrote, you co-edited, but you also had to score the film, which is, I would think, from a musician standpoint. I know as a writer, when people compare me to other authors, or I'm about to release a new book, and they say, well, is it like so-and-so? And somebody sets the bar for you, and then you've got to meet that standard. This film is wrapped around the song I Can Only Imagine, a triple platinum song. And here's Brent McCorkle, who's going to write the score for the film, which is the other music that's going on surrounding this amazing. What was that like for you personally?
Well, it was a big challenge. As I've been doing these interviews, I've realized how strange of an animal this movie is out there, because it's actually a film about a song. And if you think about that, it kind of blows your mind for a minute, you know? So yeah, it was, I have to say, I mean, as an artist, on the artist side, it was important. The biggest thing I cared about was if Bart liked the score or not, you know, like I wanted it, because we worked so hard to try to crystallize what really happened and try to capture the spirit and the essence of what happened. And so I, of course, wouldn't want any part of the music to not lend itself to that in a way that, you know, Bart felt good, because I've never had a film this vulnerable written about my life, and I carried that. I mean, it's a sacred piece of music for millions of people, but it's also a dude's life story. And for someone to expose himself to the world like that, and with all the hardships that he endured, and, you know, like you say, some of his own personal struggles that, you know, were on days where he wasn't his best self, you know, like he allowed us to tell that story. And so the music, wrapping it around, as you say, the big song, I Can Only Imagine, it was something that I didn't take lightly on two accounts. One, the sacredness of the music to millions of people, but also the actual telling of Bart's story and making sure that the music was supporting that at every turn. The cool thing is when you score, for me, everybody scores differently, but for me, I'm looking for that first main motif. I'm looking for a little thing that kind of repeats itself throughout the film, and maybe you don't hear it, but you're definitely going to feel it. And the coolest thing about this score was the motif was given to me already, and it was in those first three notes you hear of the piano. Da, na, na. Well, I was like, oh, well, that's the motif of the score. And I mean, it's probably, those notes probably repeat in my score maybe 40 times, you know, like it's just this recurring expression of theme. So the biggest gift in the job that I inherited was the main motif was kind of already baked in. And so I knew it was going to be those three notes, and I just had to figure out how I was going to express them. Well, what I found was I could use those three notes even in the dark sections of the song. When Arthur is his darkest self, I could turn those three notes and make them feel dark. And you know, of course, in the bright spots, I was able to use it. But it just ended up being this really versatile tool. And the spiritual element of it is that there's this refrain in Bart's life, and he doesn't maybe know it all the time, but there's this constant, you know. And then at the end, of course, we hear the music fully expressed in the song. So I was very protective. In a few of the edits, they wanted to play more of the I Can Only Imagine song, and I was very protective, and my notes were always save the song for the last finale. Don't play pieces of it. And you know, there was a scene where they were writing the song together, and it was very cool. But I'm actually personally glad it got cut from the film, because, you know, the score, the story, everything's building up to that final finale where, you know, he gets to sing. So yeah, I was very pleased. It was definitely humbling to do a score about a movie that is, you know, completely constructed around a song that millions of people love. That was, you know, it was daunting, but I think it does support the film well. And I asked Bart if, you know, what he thought of the score, and he liked it. So, you know, it was a cool experience for me, artistically and spiritually. I would say for me, on my spiritual journey, I really appreciate you making the distinction. And I think it's a big conversation to have. I think oftentimes on a Christian film, I think the heart is right for sure, but with a faith-friendly film, I think you're able to make a movie that people from all walks of life will see and it can resonate with. And you kind of have to trust that there's a spiritual work that's going to begin in them. And so for me, I love a faith-friendly film like The Blind Side, or, you know, the earlier film I did, Unconditional. or The Help. I love movies that don't completely relegate itself to the faith space, and so many people will see this, and I personally feel like that's where I'm supposed to be at if I'm going to do something that has a faith element in it. So I appreciate you making that distinction. That means a lot to me. But as far as what this movie personally meant to me, I'll get real with you for a second. In my own faith walk, everybody's wired differently, but for me, I've really had a struggle in my life with forgiveness. When I'm wounded or hurt, or somebody does me wrong, someone takes advantage of me, it's in my wiring somehow. It's in my nature to not be able to let that go. And I've realized that about myself, and I've lost a lot of quality time. I mean, I'm in my mid-40s, but I've lost a lot of my life looking back, ruminating, oh, those people, man. And I just realized, how much of a spiritual struggle that is for me. And I must say that working on this film has helped me with that a lot, because Bart forgave much. And it just made my problems and things that I was holding on to and seething about just seem so small, in comparison. And I just realized, like, people who've had much harder lives than me, at the baseline are happier spiritually. And I just realized that that's an element of my spiritual walk that I need to work on, and it has been changing. And it is just amazing to let your hurts go to God, and I honestly think for me, again, getting real with you, I think it's a faith issue, because if you're holding on to that, you're unwilling to give it to God, and so it says something about my faith, when I'm not able to do that. So anyway, man, I appreciate all those questions, but for me, as you say, like in a faith-friendly film, I think forgiveness can resonate with a lot of people. And I think that gets you looking inward and gets you asking a lot of questions. And it did for me. And so I really benefited personally in my spiritual walk from working on this movie. And I feel different. I do. I feel differently. I'm walking through some stuff right now, and I feel like I'm carrying it a lot lighter, and I'm able to replace it with good things, which I think is what God would want, so.
Well, that's the deep sense of this story, is that in all the trials and tribulations, it was when he saw a change in his father, who all of a sudden he could see a transformation. And when we see a transformation in somebody else, it provokes us to want to rise to that standard, which really is the standard of the Messiah. But we see it in other people, and if we really allow ourselves to be vulnerable, then it goes deep in us, and we say, he was able to forgive all that, and I'm holding on to this thing that somebody did over $1,000 4 years ago. Man, what's up with me?
Yeah.
So, and that is an integral part of this whole story, is the transformation that forgiveness and reconciliation bring. Now,
yes.
Now you had to capture that, and I don't think people realize that music sets the tone. It has a lot to do with worship and what we were created to do, and it's a language between God and ourselves. That music, the angels created to worship, we were created to worship. So music resonates in a way, and the score that you wrote for the film has to keep the tone and the tenor. And as you said, the three notes might be played, I guess it was played in one key in the lighter moments and played in a lower key or in the lower part of the scale in other places, which made the same notes lighter or darker, but you were able to use it as a GPS, if you will, to guide people, and it does have a subtle. You hear, you're watching the movie, you're listening to the dialogue, but there's a score there that unless you are tuned in, you don't realize that the score is taking you by the hand and leading you emotionally. It's pushing little buttons all the way along the way, which causes you to emote, and how you connect with the dialogue. It can ruin a movie, or it can become the navigational tool to guide you to that place that you want to get to. And you said you were so glad that they held true to singing the song as the grand finale and not allowing it to, not even, did you at one point have pieces of it in various places and then decided just to score it differently? Or did you just stay true to creating an original soundtrack, an original score, and then the song itself?
Well, we had scenes in the movie, actual filmed scenes, where they were kind of discovering the song with the band, and there was a lot of back and forth in the team of if it should go or not, and I was glad that it went, because I really felt like, it's like when you go see a fireworks show and it's $100,000 show and they just set off like $20,000 worth of it in the last 10 seconds or whatever. You just want that rise, you want that lift at the end. So I was personally glad that they removed that. But as far as what you're saying about the scoring process itself, it's very wise what you say, because when you think of soap operas, you generally think of really cheesy score. You think of manipulation, like they're trying, like, the sappy, sad music comes on when there's a sad scene, but we don't care. Somehow we just don't care.
Right.
And so you have to mine down into the true emotion that's already there. If you're trying to manufacture something that's not there spiritually or emotionally, it's going to sound horrible. And you're right, it will ruin the film. And so nothing kills me more than a score that sticks out when you have someone who's kind of emotionally tone deaf driving the process because they're pumping score into the scene that it doesn't belong there. And so when you're trying to manufacture something that's fake, it really grates on a human heart, because we know. But what's so cool about a score that can follow that emotional thread, as you say, is it can bring out that energy and kind of cause it to rise more to the surface. So, I don't want to give away any scenes in the film, but that energy that you're talking about, that spiritual, emotional energy, it's already there. And the score is just that kind of last brushstroke to really cause it to flourish. And so for me, there were tears as I was composing, because I'm, tears falling onto my desk, as I was composing, because the emotion is already there and you're feeling it, and you're letting that feeling come up as you're playing and as you're putting in the score. So for me, obviously, it was when Bart chooses to forgive his father. That's when the tears came for me, because it's resonating with me so deeply, and it's awakening all this stuff that I want to happen in my heart, and so I trust that people will have that same feeling, that same spiritual experience that I was having as I was writing the score. Andy talked about this. Andy, one of the directors who edited the film with me, talked about an exact same moment in his editing where he was weeping, as he was like putting the edit together. So, when you are putting your heart, your soul, when you're prayerfully doing it from hopefully a spiritual place, you hope and you trust that is going to translate out to other people that are watching the film. But I appreciate the questions about the score, because it really is my favorite part. So I'm a producer, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I'm an editor. And I do all these different things because I taught myself back in Texas how to do it, But the score is my most precious, sacred piece of the filmmaking process. And it's because I was a musician before I was a filmmaker. But it's the part where the life gets kind of breathed into your entire story, and you see it all come together, and the film kind of acts as almost like a glue, that brings it all together. And so it's just always my favorite part of the process is to watch the film, get the music, the original music that, has never existed before, put into the song. It does something very special, very, very soulful to a story when it's done right. And, I'm just really, really thankful that John and Andy let me score it. And then I was going to say one other thing. The other part where I really identified with Bart in this story is the underdog, as you said, coming up from Dallas and not being in the Austin market and those kind of things. And I actually was a musician trying to break in, and I went to Nashville and I went to GMA. And I had my little CDs, and I was passing around everybody. I'd made a little record, in Arlington, Texas. And, some people talked to me, but for the most part, people weren't interested, and you realize how much grinding you really have to do, like how much you're going to have to do to break in. It felt like Nashville kind of wasn't my town, and it seemed like most people didn't want to talk to me. So, even in me and John and Andy's career, you get a lot of rejection, you get a lot of no's, you get a lot of people that just aren't interested. And you have to continue to pull yourself up by the bootstraps with that rejection and say, well, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to get better. And I'm going to trust that there are more opportunities for me on the other side of that painful no I just got. So to see Bart go to GMA and, and fail, and like nobody wants them, like I resonate with that. I think that is the artist's journey in a way. You have to understand that you will be rejected, and not everybody's going to tell you yes. And Spielberg's not going to call you tomorrow and say, out of the blue, and give you $100 million film. Like, it's a process, it's a journey, and you have to be good with the ups and downs and the highs and lows of that, and know that it's not always going to be ponies and rainbows out there as far as, the opportunities that come, but I always encourage people to stay in it, because I do feel like a lot of artists get discouraged and they quit. And I think a lot of our great artists today have given up a little too early, because you have to really stay with it. And it's going to be Roach Motel level for a while, but I'm thankful that I've stayed with it. And my wife and my kids have really stood by me, even hard times, hard financial times. We definitely at the beginning, as you can imagine my story, it's a starving artist kind of origin story there in Dallas. And it was hard, but we stuck together, and it's just amazing. It feels like you get 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but if you stay in the game, you're slowly driving down the field,
Did you find yourself personally identifying with Bart in some of the aspects of his journey and paralleling some of the aspects of your journey? And is that why it became such a emotional connection for you with the score? The screenplay and the storyline, it was a biographical sketch leading up to this breakthrough song. But there's a biographical, so it's a movie about a song paralleling a movie about a life.
Yes.
So there's a almost a helical kind of process here, where there's intertwining going on, and it's his life along with how this song is brought to life. And your journey, where you started out, did you see yourself identifying?
Absolutely. And I appreciate that question. I was kind of the holdout on the team, and it was cool. But my whole thing was, guys, I feel like this movie should work as a biography, even if the song didn't exist. Like, the arc has to be right. It's Bart's story. So while the song is the main theme of it, you're right. We kind of had two things going. We have the nostalgia for the song. We have the love of the song. But we also have this guy's story that is kind of extricated from the song. If you think of it, it's like at the end of the thing, he writes the song. But up to that point, this was like the journey he went on that got him into the place to kind of have his antennas up to, to get this song, at the end. So I was a big advocate of fighting for the story and in the writing, really making it relatable. I'm an 80s kid. And so I definitely wanted to feel that 80s nostalgia when he was growing up, because we're similar in age. And so the kids' camps and, I'm a pastor's kid. So, the church camp stuff, all that, I wanted that to resonate, and it actually did parallel my life. I would say there are tons of parallels in mine and Bart's life. But to your point before and what I was kind of sharing, I think he baseline, not saying it was easy at all, but I think he has had more of a forgiving heart, and so I think in the times where he's chosen the positive and to see the beauty, I'm kind of more the brooding, angsty artist that, kind of sees the dark in the world. And you need that. You need guys like that when you're telling stories, because there is dark in the world, and the contrast of it helps you tell a great story. So if it was all pixie dust, it wouldn't be true to Bart's story, number one, and number two, it wouldn't be very entertaining. And so you had to come in with the real elements of his life that were hard. I'm good at that stuff, but here later, lately, I've really become more of a person that's pushing towards the beauty, and towards the goodness, because there's so much of it. You just have to look around and open your eyes and see it. And so, yeah, definitely with his starving artist roots, dreamer kid at the beginning, that is in the balance. Like, that could have all gotten crushed out of him. He could have just given up and said, well, life is terrible, but he didn't. He kept pushing. And so I was very moved by him. And, he's a little kid trying to navigate a really hard world. And there were several moments where he could have let it crush him to the point that he gave up, but he didn't. He persevered. And I think for the artists that see this movie, that's going to be a side story that really encourages them. Maybe they're just right on the edge of writing their big song, or maybe it never happens, but if that's what you're called to, if that's like, we all have this innate wiring and programming, and we're all different. We all have these kind of different frequencies, like we're individuals, and so I think some people tend to want to give up more, and they need to be encouraged. And what I've done in my life lately is, and no one talks about this in the mainstream, and I wish they would, but I really feel like everybody in this world should reach out for a mentor that's better than them in some area. So if you struggle financially, latch onto somebody that's like an entrepreneur that will be like, no, man, okay, let me see your checkbook. Dude, you're spending that much money on eating out? Come on, So you need, I think that's one thing that actually hurts us. If you put the spiritual aside, let's talk about culture. I just think that hurts us in culture. I don't think we should be afraid to ask for help, because there's some people that are just wired up to be better than us at certain areas. And if you want to be better, get with somebody that just has that on lockdown. And so, that happened spiritually with me with Bart's story. Before going into this movie, I realized I kind of had that spiritual problem, that spiritual thorn of not forgiving. So in that way, Bart has really mentored me and been somebody that I've looked up to. But also, I have real mentors in my life, that I've reached out for and said, hey, you have to humble yourself to a mentor. You have to say, hey, I'm not very good at this in my life, and you are. Would you spend some time with me? Will you talk this through with me? One guy I've reached out to recently for mentoring, he lost a child to cancer. And for a while, it was very difficult for him spiritually, but now he's come through this amazing journey, and he's just further ahead spiritually than I am, with just being a man at peace. He has peace in his heart, and I want that so much. So I was like, hey man, will you mentor me? He's like, yeah, sure I will. And I know he's going to help me grow, and he's going to lift me up. And I would say, as men, or even as women who are watching this, don't be afraid to search your heart and look at the areas where maybe your wiring is weak. Like, you don't have to shame yourself out over it. You don't have to be guilty. Just be like, okay, well, for whatever reason, if it's my conditioning or just how my genetics are, whatever it is, that we don't have to really get to the bottom of that, but to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm weak in this area, I need some help, and have the courage to seek out someone that's better than you and ask them to give you some guidance and some mentoring. I think that could really change our culture, spiritual and otherwise.
So the kind of segues right into my next question, which is, you were a co-writer, co-editor, and almost a co-director, you second unit director, and you're working alongside the Irwin brothers, who have their own dynamic, and now you're in this collaborative mode. You had already tested the waters with Woodlawn with them, and there was a connection made. Now you're taking on this, which is, from a magnitude perspective, Woodlawn was a story that resonated extremely well here in the local area, personally identifiable. In Los Angeles, I don't know what the reception was or what the identification was, but in this case, this is a worldwide phenomenon song that's crossed into every nation, every tongue, and working with the Irwin brothers in a collaborative way. How did you find that fit? You talk about where someone's weak, someone's strong. Where was your weakness? Where was your strength? Where was theirs? And how did it work where you can come up with a product like this, where you have the Irwin brothers don't have the same personality. They have different thoughts as well as you bring another dimension to this. So it was really a collaboration of three, not just a collaboration of two.
I appreciate you pointing that out, man. That means a lot to me. I always, when I work with John and Andy, I always refer to myself as the stepbrother, which is kind of funny. But I am actually almost perfectly in the middle, personality-wise, between the two of them. And so I get John and I get Andy. And that's been a really great blessing to us, because they come together in certain areas, but then they move off in completely separate spheres, and that's how they get their work done. So the division of labor is very interesting. So John is the writer, and Andy's not. John is the director of photography. Andy's not. Andy loves working with actors. John does not. Andy loves to edit. John does not. So it's like they split their work together, and they come together when they direct, but they split. But what's interesting about where I fit in is I do all of that. And so I can go work with Andy on editorial, and we get along really good, and we don't fight. We have disagreements and conflicts sometimes on an edit, but that's normal. That's normal friction. And that's kind of, sometimes you need that friction to forge the cold. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's never anything that has disrupted our friendship or anything like that. We get along and we do good work together. And in the same way with John and I writing, we just have an ease of workload. We just have a mesh. And so personality wise, all three of us are different, but I say this a lot, and I come across condescending, and I don't mean to be, but like, for a lot of people in the faith space, they don't really hold a high level of quality and excellence as a value. And that hurts my heart, because I want to be a great filmmaker. I'm not yet. I'm good, but I'm not great. And John and Andy are on this journey of good to great. And they're the guys in town, so to speak, that have put in just the grind hours to learn the craft. John is excellent with cameras, and Andy has edited tens of thousands of hours of footage. And so, you know, that's one of the big reasons why I'm able to work with these guys. And so that keeps us all on the same page, because you're able to put away your own egos and thoughts and pretense, because you're just trying to make the best story you can. And that, you know, brings us together and gets us on immediately on the same page. And so, so yeah, it's different personalities and it's different opinions. And I think one thing that I brought to it that was kind of cool, and none of us really expected it, was it became a trio at times when we were watching for notes. And when there's three of us in there, you always have a tiebreaker. So sometimes John would get vetoed, sometimes I would get vetoed, sometimes Andy would get vetoed, but, you know, 2 out of 3 kind of wins, and it helps you kind of let go. Whereas, you know, with 2 people in the room, you might butt heads more. Or if there was just one person in the room, you're lost in your own mind and you don't even know what's good or bad. So having the 3 of us together when we're actually watching scenes and bouncing ideas around, it was a cool kind of, it was a trifecta, you know, of ideas and thoughts, and one, you know, one idea would kind of win out. So yeah, it's been cool. I've really enjoyed working with these guys, and it has been a really very, very much a collaborative process, and I'm appreciative of them, you know, kind of letting a third person into their sphere, because that's got to be really hard, you know, hard to do. But yeah, I had a very cool vantage point on this movie. I was around before we started writing. You know, we talked about it. We wanted it to be a PG movie that parents would take kids to see, even though it had hard issues. So we had to figure out creative ways to show the violence, to show the trauma, but still draw a PG rating and not PG-13, because we wanted our children to see it. You know, so anyway, it was a very cool experience working with the guys from script to screen. And very excited to see what it does this weekend coming out. And I think, you know, no matter how many people see it, I really truly believe the people who do see it, it's going to resonate with them deeply, and it's going to raise some questions that I think maybe open their hearts up more.
That's certainly our hope and prayer. We've been talking with Brent McCorkle, co-writer, co-editor, second unit director, and composer of the score for the soon-to-be-released film I Can Only Imagine by the Irwin Brothers and Lionsgate. An amazing story about Bart Millard's life and the song I Can Only Imagine. Brent McCorkle, it was an honor and a privilege to have you here on Revealing the Truth. You're a great guest, and I hope to meet you. We're right down the road, so come see us anytime here at the studio.
Thank you, sir, for having me. It was really, really a privilege, and thanks for everything.
God bless you, and may God bless all the works of the hands of this movie. And we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.